Hi guys, and today we will be reading chapters 1 through 4 of Blood Will Tell by April Henry. Chapter 1. Blood and Bones. Freshly spilled blood is wet, shiny, and startling crimson. Newly exposed bone is as pearly as glowing white. Blood and Bones. Before the night was out, Nick Walker would see things that would drop him to his knees. Before the week was out, he would do things he would have said were impossible, and he would learn truths that he would desperately wish were lies. Chapter 2. A Good Girl. In a little over an hour, 7-year-old Mariana Chavez would be lying in a ditch, her unseeing eyes staring at the stars. But for now, Mariana laid on her back, looking up at the lights on Home Depot's far away ceiling. She was stretched out on a low, flat cart, topped with curved bars that looked like an orange jungle gym. She lifted one of her legs so she could admire her new rain boots with red-black dots. The best part were the toes, decorated with eyes and an antenna. The boots looked just like ladybugs. Why is this so confusing? Mariana's mom muttered as she scanned the rows of little round pieces of shiny metal and black rubber that would somehow fix the drippy kitchen faucet. And why must Mr. Edmonds be so... She paused, and Mariana knew she was skipping over a swear word. So useless. Mr. Edmonds was their apartment manager. He was the only one who was supposed to fix things. Only 2 years ago, he had tried to fix the leaking toilet and just made it worse. And after that, Mariana's mom had started to just trying to fix everything that broke herself. Mariana also didn't like Mr. Edmonds, but for different reasons. When her mom wasn't watching, he sometimes stared at her and said things to her, too, about how pretty she was, about how she seemed older than 7. It wasn't that she minded being told those things. She just didn't like to hear them from Mr. Edmonds, who looked a little like a tanned lizard. Finally, her mom picked something and paid for it. When they drove home, it was already growing dark. Mariana helped carry in the groceries they had bought before going to Home Depot, staggering a little under the weight of the bags. "You're a good girl, Mariana," her mom said, resting her hand briefly on her shoulder. "You're a good helper." Helper reminded Mariana what would come next. Putting away the groceries and then holding a flashlight while her mom swore at the wrench and the faucet and Mr. Edmonds and complained that Mariana wasn't holding the light still. "Can I go over to Hector's to play?" Hector was her best friend. He lived in the next apartment building. Her mom was already shaking her head. "I don't think so, honey." "Please?" Mariana drew the word out. Her mom relented. "Okay, I guess you've earned it." But when Mariana knocked on the door to Hector's apartment, no one answered. It was fully dark now. She knocked again, but there were no sounds from inside. She was dragging her feet back down the walk, not at all eager to go home and hold the flashlight, when she spotted something that made her stop. A kitten. A little black and gray striped kitten. It took one startled glance at her and then ran around the corner. Mariana loved kittens. And if she brought this one home, maybe this time her mother wouldn't say no. Not when it was right there in their apartment, and already best friends with Mariana. Hands outstretched, Mariana ran around the corner and into the darkness. 90 minutes later, Mariana's mom called Hector's mom to say it was time for her daughter to come back, and learned that the family had only been home for 15 minutes. not see Mariana. Chapter 3. Against her will. When the text loaded up his phone, Nick was doing his homework, or to be more accurate, he had his history textbook open while he watched YouTube music videos on his laptop. 911 assist near Gresham, missing 7-year-old me at 2100. The text was from Mitchell Williams, Nick's team leader in the Portland County Sheriff's Office search and rescue team. Homework now completely forgotten. Nick texted Ruby McClure. Any chance I can get a ride? He, Ruby, and a girl named Alexis Frost had all joined SAR at the same time and become friends. Ruby was the only one with a car. Once you were notified, SAR gave you just an hour to get your gear and assemble at the sheriff's office. On a Sunday night, but the buses were few and far between. Ruby texted back a second later, "Sorry, at chamber music concert with parents. Already cutting it close." Nick jumped to his feet. He needed to change it into outdoor gear and grab his SAR backpack and red helmet, and to persuade his mom to let him borrow her car. There was no sense in asking to use his brother's car. If Nick needed to borrow the car to drive to the emergency room, or he would die from a collapsed lung or something, Kyle would probably still say no. Every time he was called out on an SAR mission, he felt closer to his dad, a soldier who had died a hero in Iraq when Nick was only 4. His mom was dead set against him ever joining up, but she had agreed to let him be part of SAR. What he hadn't told her was that SAR was a stepping stone, a place to acquire skills that would come in handy once he turned 18 and could enlist. In liberal Portland, there were no high school-based ROTC programs, but SAR would teach Nick how to track, use knives, give first aid, survive in the wilderness, navigate with a topo map and GPS, and even collect crime scene evidence. He figured that any of all of those will look good to a recruiter. 90 minutes later, Nick and 12 other members of SAR's Alpha team clambered out of the sheriff's white 15-passenger van and into the parking lot of a large apartment complex. John Partridge, an adult advisor, had driven them to the spot in outer southeast Portland, past used car lots, strip joints, and fast food places Nick had never heard of. In the 2 months since Nick had joined SAR, he had taken part in 5 searches for lost hikers and hunters, and 2 for crime scene evidence. But this is the first time he had been called out for an urban search. When it came to finding people, SAR usually concentrated on the great outdoors, but law enforcement could also mobilize them to search for the vulnerable who might have wandered away, the disabled, the elderly, and children. Chris Nigel, a sheriff's deputy, was already waiting for them. Aside from Chris and John, everyone else standing in the dark parking lot was a teenager. Most of the other teens were certified who had been called out on dozens of searches. Nick, Ruby, and Alexis were allowed to participate in searches, but before they were certified, they needed to complete nine months of training. That included mandatory classes every Wednesday evening and practice outings 1 week in a month. "How could you even remember which apartment was yours?" Alexis asked, turning in a slow circle. The low light made her high cheekbones even more pronounced. Nick tore his gaze away and saw what she meant. They were surrounded by about 20 identical beige buildings, each with 3 apartments above and 3 below. All the apartments had dark gray doors, and matching white drapes hung in every window. There are minor differences. Ruby's breath clouded the air in front of her fox-like face. There's the cardinal orientation, possessions stored on porches, the door decorations. Nick and Alexis exchanged a look that mingled exasperation, amusement, and an odd kind of pride. Ruby didn't notice. Mitchell Wiggins called out, "Huddle up, team." His long, pale hands waved them in. He was already wearing the yellow climbing helmet that marked him as team leader. Today we will be conducting a hasty search for a 7-year-old girl named Mariana Chavez, who went to play with another child in this complex nearly 4 hours ago. But the other family was at home, and she never returned to her own apartment. Next to Nick was Alexis, shivered. "We'll go door to door first," Mitchell continued. "Then we'll clear the grounds. If that fails, we'll check nearby houses, walk roadsides, and clear fields. Remember, we are not only looking for the girl, but we are also looking for any sort of evidence as to her whereabouts. If Mariana were an adult, this might turn out to be what is known as SAR circles as a bastard search, when you went looking for someone who had never really been lost at all. But it was nearly as likely that as missing little kid was a false alarm. Mariana has shoulder-length black hair," Mitchell continued. "She's wearing black pants, a pink top, a dark blue puffer jacket, and red and black rain boots that look like ladybugs. She is in good health and normally not much of a risk taker." Nick reviewed what they had learned in class about lost person behavior. 7 was old enough to travel quite a bit further than even a slightly younger child, but 7 was still young enough to be impulsive or to give in to a desire to explore. Mariana was old enough to have been taught to avoid strangers and yet too young to realize that some strangers meant no harm. So this girl might even hear them calling her name and choose to stay hidden and quiet. Sometimes little kids even fell asleep and sleep so deeply that they didn't even hear the searchers calling for them. Mitchell scanned the circle of volunteers. "Temperatures are forecast to drop below freezing tonight, so if she's out here, it's important that we find her." Nick thought of the 2 nearby freeways. Somebody could have snatched Mariana and be hundreds of miles away. "Does anyone have any questions?" Mitchell asked. Alexis raised her hand. "What about Mariana's dad? Could he have taken her?" Chris answered. "Good question, Alexis. We always have to consider if it's a custody situation. But in this case, I've spoken to him. He's in Ohio and hasn't seen his daughter for 2 years. When no one else spoke up, Mitchell said, "Some of these people are probably sleeping. Remember, not everyone is going to react well to being woken up, especially if they hear someone pounding on the door and yelling, 'Sheriff's office.' Just say you're with the search and rescue and keep it at that. Most people want to help if they know you're looking for a lost child." Chris cleared his throat. "Of course, it's possible that someone who lives in these apartments took Mariana. That's why you need to keep your eyes and ears open as you go door to door. But do not intervene. Just observe and report back to base. And whatever you do, don't go inside. Even if they invite you in, if you see anything that makes you the least bit suspicious, don't let on. Just get out of there, come back to base, and let us know. If someone is holding this girl against her will, we don't need to give them another hostage." Chapter 4. Gleams of White. Mitchell quickly broke them up into teams of 2 or 3. Nick and Ruby were put on the same team as Dimitri, who was certified. Alexis was teamed up with Ezra and Max, also certified. Each group was given 4 buildings to clear. Dimitri decided their group would work left to right, top to bottom. Together they went up the stairs. He knocked at the first door with a heavy fist. Nick and Ruby stood behind him. Ruby had a notebook to record anything they learned. With nothing to hold, Nick clasped his hands awkwardly in front of him. He felt like the missionaries his mom was always turning away. Except they only came in pairs. Search and rescue, Dimitri called and in his heavy accent. An old woman opened the door. She was pulling an orange cardigan over her maroon flannel pajamas. Yes? She looked curiously at their red helmets and SAR backpacks. Her front teeth were missing. Nick ran his tongue over his teeth. Hello, ma'am. We are from Search and Rescue, Dimitri said. We are looking for a girl. Her name is Mariana Chavez, and she's 7 years old of age. She has dark hair and is wearing dark clothes and rubber rain boots. Oh, I know Mariana. The woman clutched her cardigan tighter. She's missing? I'm afraid so, Nick said as Ruby scribbled something down on her notepad. If you do see her or have any information, there will be someone from Search and Rescue in the parking lot you can talk to. I'm going to have to do another part 2, guys. Sorry. Bye.